Achieving a holistic understanding of business requires a synthesis of technical and ethical aspects based on humanistic values. The 16th International Symposium on Business Ethics in Society, held at IESE recently, presented some new challenges for rethinking economic activity from a more ethical point of view.
Well, first of all, I think that this has to be understood as not philanthropy, not a kind of giving of resources and emptying of one's resources. But instead, it ought to be understood, first of all, as a focus on the well-being of key constituencies. We sometimes speak of stakeholders. So think about customers, for instance. What is it that customers need? What genuinely fulfills them or assists them as human beings? What capacity do we have to address authentic human well-being? And who needs that capacity, and how can we make that available to them? This doesn't mean that it ought not to charge a fair price, because profit is necessary if we're going to continue the operation. We have employees and investors and owners and others who depend upon us. But it does mean that, first of all, we think about the needs of others rather than what others can give us. The same token, we want to think about employees and how we can provide good work, meaningful work for employees, how we can make their work productive for the organization, how we can create value, create wealth for investors and owners. But as a matter of fact, as a number of companies already say, they're convinced that if they treat customers well, really serve customers and provide for their needs, treat their employees well, make their work productive, regard them as human beings and collaborators in the enterprise, that profit will follow. The modern notion that comes out of finance, that the objective is to maximize the wealth of shareholders for a business. How do you know when you've maximized profit? In fact, what we should be telling students, and I think it's consistent with Benedict's view, that they should be looking to optimize profit. One word difference. Business, the way we do it now, has a number of dysfunctions. Business leaders, it seems to me, need to step back and think about what they're doing. Try to escape the trap of pursuing maximal profitability, and instead try to refocus their energy on creating good products, good services, and good work. And there will be a reward for that.
Regulators have been probably too close to the bankers, or the bankers too close to the regulators, so they did not have the critical distance to really regulate. And they allowed a lot of financial activities to go outside of the regulatory area, what is called the shadow banking. The shadow banking business models should be simpler, easier to manage, and also easier to regulate. On the top of it comes, of course, the question of the capital, the level of capital in financial institutions that was been extremely low. And during the last 2 years, the financial institutions have not done a lot to increase this level of capital despite of the crisis. And finally, at the individual level, which is also very important, much of the financial business has been developed very close to a conflict of interest situation. I mean, you cannot keep under the same roof activities with so high level of conflict of interest, even if you say that internally there are walls, Chinese walls, there are procedural separations, and so on and so on. I think there have to be, these activities have to be splitted. During these last 2 or 3 decades, we have been multiplying transactions which were destructive to existing financial relations, which is very clearly visible with the subprime crisis, where the credit was granted not to help me to get my house, but in order to make my commitment tradable on the market. So there was a transaction that was already programmed, and I was to some extent the instrument of this transaction. The relation is absolutely fundamental to any economic human activity, and any economic activity. Relation means trust. Relations means fecundity in the sense that it's something is generated which is maybe not known ex ante with precision for the best and for the worst. So fecundity is absolutely, the locus of fecundity is relation. If we kill relations by transactions, we kill trust, we kill cooperation, and we kill the capacity to create. It's a hard sell for large enterprises. It is a very easy sell to small enterprises who know better than anyone that without trust and without strong relationship, they cannot operate. But I think that the large enterprises are going to come under pressure from the financial collapse, but also from the economic collapse.
I think right now it doesn't fall into the definition of a profession. Professions are typically defined by a variety of characteristics, one being an identified body of knowledge, second, a system for certifying that someone has actually mastered that knowledge, third, a commitment to use that knowledge for public service, and fourth, an ability to govern oneself and the community that's practicing that knowledge. Management as a profession, it's a project that's largely been abandoned in the last couple of decades and replaced with a more market logic-oriented view of management, specifically managers as agents of shareholders. And that's largely the dominant paradigm that exists. A new perspective called agency theory argued that managers should not see themselves as professionals, but rather as hired hands of the shareholders. Now, this whole idea of managers as agents was not an innocent exercise. It actually reconceptualized the identity of managers away from notions of things like having a duty or responsibility to the firm, its employees, to the community, and the stakeholders, and instead argued that managers literally needed to be bribed to do their jobs. And the form that this took was these excessive high-leverage compensation systems. It's the beginning of a first step of starting an alternative conversation to ask the question, what is the purpose of management? What is the purpose of being an executive? What is the purpose of the corporation? Who should it serve? These are questions right now that are not addressed in business education. Moreover, boardrooms, for example, have neglected these issues, outsourcing their judgment to the share price, for example. And we think that when you look around the world, issues like pandemics, environmental sustainability, climate change, these are issues that business is going to have to help solve. But it's going to have to be helped solved by business leaders who have a wider understanding of how business fits in the larger matrix of social institutions. Universities have an enormous role to play in this. They inculcate society's elites, those who will lead its most important institutions with a particular set of values and norms and understandings of what their roles are. And I think for many years, universities have started thinking of themselves, especially business schools, have started thinking of themselves more like businesses rather than as academic institutions.